You're watching AWANI's Selecta, a show where we aggregate some of the bigger events and bigger interviews that we have had over this week. We start off with Let's Talk with Shacotan, where we interview Senator Yusmadi talking about the recent spat that we have had, or a quarrel, if you may, between Malaysia and Indonesia. Here is Yusmadi, the senator of Dewan, or member of Dewan Negara, speaking with Shacotan on Let's Talk.
Why did you decide to respond to statements he had made to the Singapore press, where he characterized the Malaysian government as essentially incoherent and unstable?
Because for me, first of all, he has to see what is happening in Malaysia as something to bring the region forward. So what he said, for me, number one, is destructive. So that's, I have to say, it's destructive, it's presumptuous. So for me, it has to make someone to bring back the discourse to the right forum. Because what he's doing, he's basically stretch and distract what the real potentials of the regional, I would say, progress.
Okay, so that's your perspective on what's happened in the Malaysian government. I will learn a little bit about you later on, but what do you understand about Bilahari himself? I mean, he was part of the government, he was a veteran, a diplomat. He's been making statements about Malaysia for some time now. Do you see him as an extension of the Singapore government, a kind of unofficial voice, or is he somebody we should disregard because that's his individual position?
You're almost right. The last part is the individual position. Because he tried very hard to compete himself, to position himself. Because there are many towering names in Singapore. You have Kishore, you have Tomiko, you have Joshua, you have so many other big names. So this guy thought that he may even at least somewhere around to be reckoned with. But for me, more importantly, is that it's not only about him. He must remember when you sit as in your capacity as former diplomat, you are also advisor to the ministry. Of course, it does give repercussions. So for me, I don't want to even give that leverage to him. I would rather talk to the current officials, diplomats, or current officials, elected rep. But I don't want to underestimate what we call it. In diplomacy, they call it track 2 diplomacy, the public diplomacy, because for me, it is about 30 million Malaysians, it is about 5 to 6 million Singaporean, and it is about 5 to 600 ASEAN populations, or even more than that. So for me, it is not small. So Bilahari writes in Nikkei, I also write in Nikkei, and sorry to promote Nikkei, but I'm trying to say these are among a few leaders who try to shape the regional thinking. Of course, for me, if something negative or negativity being instilled, it is my responsibility to really at least reply or at least rationalize it.
Also on Let's Talk, we hosted some of our colleagues from Astro Radio, particularly from Hits.fm, talking about some events there. Take a look.
Yes. Did you grow up with listening to voices like that, and the John Peels of the BBC World Service, people like that?
I'm a lot younger than that, so
Sorry.
Casey Kasem, Shadow Stevens were kind of, the thing we were all listening to in the 80s, and that's basically how, things started when Astro was established in 1996. I joined in 1997, so it's been 20 odd years. You can actually really see how we've grown and evolved in
Okay.
What about the way we do things.
What about you, Prem? And did you also have an early? Because actually, to be honest, I was a TV child. I really started with TV. Right. I only took up radio when I was a teenager, and that's when, because radio was also very mature, and you could plug into this whole world. What about you, Prem?
I mean, I guess for me, I picked up radio when it was Little Cat and Fly Guy, and the new format radio came into Malaysia.
Oh my God, you're so young.
Yeah. I do remember Alan Pereira and Patrick Teo and all that, driving to school with my dad and stuff like that.
And that was Rediffusion, was it?
That was, I think, RTM, right?
RTM.
Yeah. So it was. I mean, it seems like it was ages ago.
If you want to watch those interviews, just head on to Let's Talk with Shacotan. We have plenty of other shows there as well, but these are some of the key highlights. Also, something big that happened this week is, of course, income tax, where on my show, Notepad with Ibrahim Sani, I speak with Dr. Virenderjit Singh about the concept of filing for income tax. It is, after all, income tax season. Here are some of the clips from that particular interview. But the conversation, of course, revolves around this is the first time people are filing the income tax for the new government, and are there going to be any changes, or is it going to be the same old, same old? What would be the expectations for this year's income tax season?
Right. Actually, it's the same old, same old. I mean, the tax laws haven't really fundamentally changed, so it's going to be exactly what we used to do every year. And I think, as you pointed out, the timelines for filing is very, very important. And for most of us who are employees, end of April deadline. And those of us who have some business source income will be end of June. So I think in terms of the obligations, in terms of the timelines, submissions and what you report, it's all the same as it was before. And of course you take into account certain types of reliefs you can get, and there were one or two minor changes in the last budget, but fundamentally they've remained pretty much as it was.
So will the impact of, for instance, GST, SST and all these matters, are they going to be a matter of consideration for most of us which are employees?
Well, most of us, yes, if we are buying stuff, right, as we do, you go to a restaurant and so on, so there's service tax included and so on. But again, when people ask me about service tax, sales tax impact, I go back to look at the impact that we all saw under GST. And pretty much, because the rate is the same, it's still 6%, whether it's a service tax, whether it's a GST, whether it's a sales tax. Sales tax is a bit higher. But actually, fundamentally, you're seeing the same impact. For the man in the street, when you get an invoice and you get a bill, it just replaces. They still call it government tax anyway. So whether it's a GST or a SST, it's the same thing. So I think impact to the man in the street is very limited. The only way we can measure it is the prices. Have prices really substantially come down? And, prices are sticky downwards. Prices are very easy to increase.
Yeah, absolutely.
So fundamentally, I think GST is GST, SST is SST, and as far as income tax is concerned, that's being assessed on your income that you earn. So different basis on which you impose a tax. So it's not, shouldn't be a consideration in your filing of tax, income tax returns. The SST or sales tax, service tax is really the impact on the goods and services you buy, and maybe a higher amount that you have to pay out. So it affects your bottom line in terms of your take-home pay and what you do with it.
That was my conversation with Dr. Virendrajit Singh, speaking about income tax on my show Notepad. Some of the biggie that we have in the upcoming week is our new colleague, Melissa Idris. She is going to roll out some of the important shows that we will be flagging for this channel. Here's a sneak preview of our interview between Melissa Idris and the head of Grab Malaysia, Sean Goh, in the show For the Win. Take a look into this particular interview.
Do you agree with that? That it's actually better as a leader to be feared than it is to be loved?
I actually don't think so, right? But between the two, I think it's less important which one it is. Like ultimately, being loved or being feared, I think it's just a symptom, right? And what's really more important to me, and I think to our people here, is what is the root cause behind someone being hated or leader being hated.
Okay.
And if someone fears a leader and doesn't love a leader, could it be because that leader doesn't care about the people? Or at least doesn't give the impression of caring about the people, even if he means it inside?
Well, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you specifically is because you lead a very young team, right? A lot of the Grab employees are young millennials, and you yourself are a young leader. So how do you balance that, needing to be feared and respected and have a certain authority versus, say, being the buddy boss, being their friend? So having an emotional connection, which is great for getting people motivated and influencing your employees, but then you're seen as a friend, and employees might think that it's okay to slack off once in a while because the boss is a buddy.
Yeah,
How do
the
you
buddy
balance
boss
that?
problem.
Yeah, the buddy boss problem, right?
Yeah, so I think that it's not really about a trade-off between being a buddy or someone who's feared, right?
Right.
I think being a buddy or being seen as a buddy to millennials or to people who work in your colleagues it's actually a really positive thing, because typically when people think of their buddies, what do they think about? I can trust this person, I can open up to them, I can tell them what I truly think. And whether you're a colleague, a peer, or a boss, it really doesn't matter. I think that it's very important to have that open culture, and for everyone to see each other in a sense as buddies, right, so that they can be open.
The show For the Win, hosted by Melissa Idris, will start airing about 2 weeks from now. We'll give you more details and more promotional materials when that comes out. Finally, we can't go without saying that one of the more important shows about youth, millennials and towns and cities involve the show The Society with Farhana. Here's what's coming up this week.
In this week's episode of The Society with Farhana, we talk about what is now known as a 21st century addiction, social media.
That they hear their phone vibrating on the table, or they hear their phone, or they feel their phone vibrating in their pocket, and they're constantly checking. They have this compulsion to constantly check and recheck because they're anxious over the possibility that they might miss a post.
We discuss some of the implications of social media addiction, from cyberbullying to mental health issues, and also explores ways we can use social media for good.
People call me gold digger because of the guys I dated.
There's a lot of negativity out there. You can complain about it, or you can do something about it by combating negativity by adding positivity.
Catch me every Sunday, 10:45 p.m, only on Astro AWANI.
Those are the kind of shows that we have for this week. You've been watching AWANI Selecta. If you want to watch more of these highlights, because we know your time is precious, we have aggregated all the shows for you in this particular segment called AWANI's Selecta. Until next time.